Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Brittany Jones, and I'm an account manager here at Tech Change. We're really excited to have you guys here and thrilled to be able to welcome Emily. We do want this to be a really interactive conversation, so please drop your questions in the chat box as we go. We'll get to your questions once we get to Q&A. For right now, I'm going to turn it over to Letha from PopTech to introduce our guest speaker.
Great. Thanks a lot, Brittany, and many thanks to Tech Change for being our partner on all of PopTech's virtual podcasts and events over the course of the last several months, as we've all been stuck in a different kind of world than we usually are in when we're able to get together. Today, I'd like to welcome all of you. So good morning and good afternoon, depending on which coast you're on. I know we have a number of people joining us from the West Coast today, as well as the East Coast. And so delighted to have you with us. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Emily Pilloton, who's the founder and executive director of Girls Garage. Emily's joining us today to do a reading from her recent book, Girls Garage: How to Use Any Tool, Tackle Any Project, and Build the World You Want to See. I had the good fortune of meeting Emily now over a decade ago. Hard to believe. Emily was a PopTech Social Innovation Fellow in the class of 2009, so in the very second class of fellows that we ever had. So she was still a bit of a guinea pig. But I have to say, you know, I have little memories of every single class. I've been with every single one of them. You know, each of them is like a vintage wine. It's the best way I can sum it up now. And I have so much fun when we get to bring a fellow back and kind of hear about their trajectory over the long haul. And Emily's has just been remarkable. She came to the Fellows Program, I think it was with Project H at that time, and you know, really having this amazing commitment to underestimated communities, which I think is such a wonderful way to talk about who you're trying to reach. And you know, she served young people from the ages of, I think, 9 to 18 for all of these years, and keeps sort of evolving and changing her work. But what never changes is her commitment to young people in these underestimated communities, and the impact she's been making over that decade plus is just extraordinary. And I'm delighted to welcome you, Emily. I can't wait to hear about your journey and why on earth you wrote a book. That's like a big undertaking. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Letha. Yes, we did meet, I think 12 years ago, 11 or 12 years ago, and it really has been quite a long journey. I'm thinking back to the time when I was a fellow with PopTech, and in hindsight had no idea what I was doing. And I really credit the PopTech community to helping at every step along the way as I've been connected to young people and like really reflecting on how best to have an impact. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here wherever you are. I'm Emily Pilloton. I'm the founder and executive director of Girls Garage, which is a nonprofit and a physical space. It's where I'm sitting right now, and I'll do a little 360 tour in a minute. But I wanted to just share a little bit about the background of Girls Garage, who I am, and then I'm going to give you a little tour of the book and read an excerpt. And then most importantly, I would love to hear from all of you what this conversation makes you think about, what questions you have, and open the floor up to anyone that wants to contribute thoughts or questions. So quick little background on me. So I am the founder of Girls Garage, which is a nonprofit. As Letha mentioned kind of quickly, Girls Garage is actually the evolution of a nonprofit that I founded in 2008 under the name Project H Design. And all this work is connected. My educational background is in architecture and design. And to go back even further, as a young person, I grew up in Northern California, and I remember discovering architecture and building as a way of understanding the world as a young person. I had two grandfathers who were engineers and two grandmothers who were librarians. And I strongly believe that if there were a Venn diagram of the intersection of those two fields, that's where I landed. I think that my interest in architecture came from a spatial curiosity about how I fit in the world in physical spaces, what my identity meant in the built environment. Of course, these are things that you can't articulate when you're 10 or 11, but I now understand as an adult. And when I was 16 years old, I had this really amazing opportunity to travel to Central America, to Belize, with a group of teenagers from around the country. And I was there for the summer. This was after my junior year of high school. And while I was there, I learned how to build. I learned how to work alongside volunteers and masons and carpenters to do structural masonry. I mixed and poured like 3,000 pounds of concrete. I learned how to frame a roof and walls. And over the course of a few months, we built an entire town park. And as a 16-year-old girl who was, 5'1" and between her junior and senior year of high school, this was like a fundamentally transformative moment and allowed me to think about my role in the world and my impact in the world in a really different way than I was able to as a high school student. And so I came back from that trip with a more full understanding of what architecture was and how that was connected to communities. And so fast forward to the founding of this nonprofit in 2008, I wanted to reconnect my own architectural practice with that feeling of community and the feeling of mixing concrete and doing real hands-on work with other humans. And so the work of Project H began that journey that would then evolve into Girls Garage in 2008 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 and 13. I was teaching a shop class that was essentially like shop class with community purpose. I was teaching high school students how to do carpentry and welding and trades-based skills, but producing projects that would have a role and an impact in our community: a farmer's market pavilion, tiny homes, a school library. And so, to make a long story very short, that work was incredibly meaningful to me as a professional and also to my students. And I think it changed the way everyone looked at young people as a source of creativity and transformation. And during the course of that teaching period of my life, there was sort of this nagging thing that I kept experiencing, that I experienced as a young person, as a 23-year-old on a construction site. I experienced this, I've experienced this in many spaces in my life, where to be a woman in certain spaces comes with a certain amount of social calculus that we have to always be doing. I have to prove that I belong in the room. I have to prove that I know what I'm talking about. I have to defend my own experience, that I know what I know the same things that you know, and I belong at the table. And this is a thing that I kept experiencing even in my own co-ed classrooms. And I could see some of my female students struggling with it also. And so thus was the birth of Girls Garage, which started in 2013 as an experiment. I ran a summer camp for 9 to 13-year-old girls, and it sold out in a matter of days, which made me think, this isn't just me. This is a feeling that even young girls have. And so that one summer camp has now grown into a full-fledged year-round program and a physical space. And now Girls Garage welcomes between 200 and 250 girls every year in after school and summer programs. We have classes in carpentry, welding, architecture, design build, activist art. And I think the way that Girls Garage has grown is from a seedling of an idea and a single summer camp into a physical space and a community that is truly diverse, that is deeply committed to each other and like really interested and hungry to build the world we want to see. And I mean that literally. I use that phrase a lot. It's in the subtitle of our book. But I think this is a moment, and this is a year and an era in which girls and women are rethinking our identities and our roles in really complicated, complex, intersectional ways. And all of the ways in which we identify as girls and women now have political implications and have personal implications. And the world is wide open, and yet we still face certain obstacles, and we're stronger facing those obstacles together. And so in this space, that means that any girl that walks in the door is our girl. And that means we do anything that we can to serve and teach and protect and empower them to do whatever the thing is that they want to do. So I'm going to give you a quick little tour because I'm sitting against our tool wall, but this is only one of many interesting moments in this space. So like I said, this is a space here in West Berkeley. Hopefully this doesn't make you all car sick. So here's our tool wall, and I'm just going to pivot. I'm standing in our wood shop, and so there's some really intense sunlight, but this is our workbench. I have wait, I'm trying to point at it. There we go. We have our chop saw over here and some drill presses. This is where we do the majority of our carpentry-based work. I was here last night with a group of girls building chairs. And then as we pivot around, I have this very organized set of drawers that are labeled with all of our supplies and hardware. And then this is sort of our main open workspace. There's a big community maker table. We have our table saw. And then you'll see in our front windows, there is a series of posters. You can't see them too clearly from where you are, but this is where we often display work from our class that's called Protest and Print, where we make activist art. So some of the girls' posters are up there right now. And then more saws. We have some photos up of some of the projects that girls have done. These two images are sandboxes that our teen girls built last summer for some of the local preschools. And then upstairs, which, there's an upstairs classroom up there. We have a space upstairs that we use as a more of an instructional space. And we also just acquired a risograph printer. So we're building out more of a print practice, a 2D graphic design printmaking practice, which is new to me and will be really fun, especially given the upcoming election and all the things that we can think about and respond to. So that's the physical space. I want to just give you a quick intro to the book. So Letha has asked me a number of times, like, why a book? Why write a book? And people have different answers to this question. But for me and for Girls Garage as an organization, this is a space that's in Berkeley. There are so many other girls around the country and the world who email or call us and say, well, how come there isn't a Girls Garage in my town? And this is an ongoing question about how we can serve more girls, how we can include more girls. And without going too much into it, we don't currently have plans to franchise because we believe in the placeness of this place. That said, there are so many other organizations that do something similar to Girls Garage. There's Girls Build in Portland. There's Girls at Work. There's Tools and Tiaras in New York City. There's a growing community of organizations like Girls Garage that are responding to the needs of their girls in their towns and cities. And so as part of this like growing movement, I wanted to write a book because the things that I've learned having taught in this space and the things that girls have taught me is it just felt like a thing I wanted to share. And I wanted to write the book as an invitation to girls and women everywhere to join this movement of fearless builder girls who are storming the aisles of the hardware store and building things in their homes and communities. I fundamentally believe that if more girls and women have the ability to build the world they want to see, that our world will be more beautiful because of it. So this is the book. It is over 300 pages. It took 3.5 years to write. It was illustrated by a friend of mine named Kate Bingaman-Burt, who is an illustrator in Portland, Oregon. And she has this really sort of signature style that is common line weight. It's a lot of sort of simple line drawings. And I love her style because it's both whimsical and relatable and also pretty technical. She was able to capture some of the technical elements of these tools in a great way. So I thought I could read a quick excerpt from the introduction and then I'll show you some of the other features throughout the book. So I want to read a part from the introduction where I'm talking about fear. You may have seen as I pivoted that our slogan is fear less, build more. And that is our slogan because I believe that everyone is afraid of something and that instead of pretending that we don't have fear, that this is a place where we can all say, I'm afraid, and then we're going to practice what it means to act in the face of that fear. So that's sort of where I'll pick up this passage. This book is my attempt to help you bring out your brave builder girl so that years from now, you can look back on your own life as a builder and pass it on. I should tell you that the use of the word brave in this book is an intentional replacement of the word fearless, because no one is fearless. We're all afraid of something: the dark, using a miter saw for the first time, or open water swimming in my case. But fear is an invitation to be brave and to grow. Our goal shouldn't be to live without fear, but to acknowledge that fear is unavoidable and to act bravely in spite of those fears. Bravery is something you can practice and something you can choose. So let's all acknowledge that we're often scared or don't know where to start, and let's get started anyway. Read on for some tips to bring that brave builder girl out of the woodwork. Tip number 1. The best way to start is to start before you're ready. Lots of people ask me, where do I start? And I have no good answer other than you just do. Your goal is not to hit it out of the park on your first try. Your goal is to start before you're ready, wherever you are, and make small improvements every time you do it again. Number 2, acknowledge your fear and then tell it to go jump off a cliff. Sometimes when I'm teaching welding to a first timer, instead of pretending not to be scared, we just say out loud, I'm scared. And then we tell our fear, get out of here. Fear is normal and healthy, and so is your innate bravery to act in spite of it. Number 3, remember that as a girl, you are made for this. Girls and women are purposeful, self-reflective, and good at negotiating complex problems. Building requires all of these skills. Do not let anyone tell you that building is just for boys. As women, we're already wired to build beautifully. Number 4, break it down. I love solving crossword puzzles. I stare at all the empty boxes and then I pick one clue I know I can tackle and fill in that word. That word unlocks another word that's connected to it, and so on until the whole puzzle is complete. Building can seem complex, like a giant impossible task. Go build a house. But it can also be broken into smaller pieces that add up to the whole. Just start by cutting your wood. Number 5, use the correct specific language. At Girls Garage, thing is a bad word. If you say it, you have to do 10 push-ups. We don't actually make you do 10 push-ups, but anyway. Language is power, and intentional language tells the world you know what you want. Learn the specific names for the correct objects and tools. Walk into a hardware store and say exactly what you need. Put some muscle into it. I mean this literally. Building is a physical activity. You don't have to have giant biceps, but you may be surprised just how much strength you possess for swinging a hammer or driving a screw or lifting a piece of plywood. Your own body is your first and strongest tool. Practice the hard parts. I've always been awful at cutting angled wood pieces and joining them in any geometrically precise way. You'll likely try something and realize it's not your most natural skill. This is the skill you should practice the most. You are always your harshest critic. Remember that everyone else is just as befuddled and self-conscious as you are. Realizing that we're all imperfect and vulnerable can be a great comfort under pressure. Don't be so hard on yourself, and remember that the people you love are always on your side. Your identity as a builder matters. Who you are is not separate from what you build or why. The fact that you are a young girl of color, or that you're a superstar athlete, or that your parents are divorced, or that you've experienced violence or abuse, or that you're an animal lover, or anything else personal to you matters. If there are things that are personal to you, use those things as inspiration. For example, if you're an avid supporter of rescued animals, call up the local animal shelter and build them a doghouse. One of my teen girls was nervous about learning the basics of carpentry because her father worked in construction and did not want her to follow in his footsteps. But she was proud of her family and wanted to learn. Making her father proud became a motivator for her. Bring your heart and your story to what you create and scream who you are through your tools. Go big or go home. If you want to build a house, figure out how you might build an actual house. Don't settle on a cardboard model. Every single project I've ever thought was out of my league was actually just a few leaps away. Of course, you may need small steps to get to that big one, but always keep your eye on the biggest, baddest, most audacious goal. Find your mentors and ask for help. It's hard to achieve the seemingly impossible alone. The good news is that most people genuinely want to help. Mentors committed to supporting you as a person and as a builder are everywhere. Send emails to people you admire, ask to be an intern, go to events and meet people. Ask your teachers to share their experiences. Open yourself up to learning from others at every step. Support your fellow brave builder girls. Invite others in. It's been way too long, too many years, centuries, millennia, that women have not been invited into certain spaces. Now it's our turn. Be a sister in spirit to your fellow builders and share what you know generously. And finish what you start. It can be so easy to walk away from a project that just isn't working, but I encourage you to finish it even if it ends up being a huge disaster. The act of finishing is always an important lesson and also reinforces the idea that imperfection isn't the same as failure. It's merely a moment to inform your next step. Whew, that is a lot. So what's in this book and how do you use it to accomplish all these things? And then this goes on to explain some of the parts of the book, which I'll just show you quickly now. So the book is large. It has a couple different sections. The biggest section of the book is a tool encyclopedia, and there's about 150 pages of the most common tools that you might encounter. So I'll just show you what one of those pages looks like. This is the section on power tools. And so here is a drill. And as you flip forward, there's some illustrations of drill bits. There's also these bluish squares throughout the book that have fun facts about certain tools. I thought these were fun ways to make the tools come to life, almost like characters in the book. So I'll just read you the fun fact about the drill. In the early 1990s, rock star Eddie Van Halen started using a drill as a musical instrument. He would turn the drill on and hold its spinning chuck against the strings of his electric guitar, making a squealing, revving up sound that matched the melody of the song. He even painted the drill to match his guitar's graphic pattern. His live performance of the song Pound Cake is his most famous with the drill and guitar. You can Google that one later. And then the next page is the impact driver, which is different than a drill. I have them both here. If any of you are curious, this is a drill and this is a driver. You use the drill to drill holes, and you use an impact driver to install screws. I highly recommend having both because most people will put screws in using their drill and they'll strip the screw heads because this is not the right tool. Use an impact driver. So that is the toolbox. There's manual tools, hand tools, there's measuring tools, things like clamps, so all the saws, power saws and hand saws. There's a whole section on welding. And then as you go on, there's a section with some essential skills. These are things like how to write dimensions, how to pick a lock, how to change a flat tire. This is one of my favorite and most useful, how to wind up an extension cord without it becoming a rat's nest. And then the next section is some projects that you can build yourself. So there's 11 total projects. This is the first one, how to build your own toolbox. And these are illustrated projects, step by step. And this is one of my favorite projects because you can build your own toolbox and then you can fill it with your tools. That's one of the first projects that our girls do here at Girls Garage. And then the last thing that's in the book are these sort of interstitials of profiles of builder girls and women. And these range from girls who are in our program. Here's Simone. Simone is a senior in high school. She's been with us since she was 10 years old. I can't believe she's graduating. And these are written in the first person. So this is Simone's story of what building means to her. And then there are also women like Kay Morrison, who was an actual Rosie the Riveter in World War II. She was a welder. And so I want to just read one paragraph from her account. She says, I felt like a nitwit when I went to welding training, which lasted 10 days. It was entirely different from anything I had ever experienced. When I was going to high school, I worked in a soda fountain. When I graduated, I worked for JCPenney. Welding was totally different. The clothes we had to wear were so different. The cowhide jacket, the coveralls, the heavy boots with the steel toes. And it was strange working with fire, but I liked it. It made me feel like I was going to get out there and win the war myself if I had to. I think all of us Rosies felt the same way. In my era, there were people who made it challenging, people who were afraid of change. But I had a husband who was all for the rights of women, equal rights, equal pay, and that gave me support and incentive. but I was always the type of person who knew I could do what I wanted to do, and I wouldn't let people stop or deter me. I would tell young girls today that you can do anything you want to. Keep your eye on the goal and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Just do what you want to do. You have to really want something bad enough, and then you just go and do it. So that's a quick tour through the Girls Garage book. This is a book that was written for girls 14 and up, but it's been so awesome to see grown women, fathers, brothers, so many different types of people buying the book and giving us feedback about it. And my ultimate hope is that Girls Garage, the book, acts as a stand-in for Girls Garage, the space. And that this is like a substitute for me or one of our instructors standing next to you and helping you experiment and try new tools and become a fearless builder girl yourself. So thanks for listening. And I would love to hear from anyone who has questions or comments or maybe needs tool advice. I love giving tool advice.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emily. Really inspiring. I know I've worked on a couple quarantine projects myself where your book probably could have come in handy, so I've loved listening. We have a couple questions in the chat, and I know Letha has some, but for all of our listeners out there, if you do want to keep adding your questions, I think we can start off. So Stephanie has asked, it's a good question to get us started, I think. She says she's loved your program since the IIDA fundraiser a few years ago, and she's wondering if there are opportunities to get involved or volunteer, probably for those people that are maybe in the area.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Stephanie. Oh, the IIDA, I wonder, did we meet at that? That was a great event. Anyway, thanks for asking that. And I think one way in which we try to invite people to, but maybe volunteer is the wrong term, but we do consider ourselves a really thriving community. And I think one thing that we're continuing to do and trying to do more of is to connect our girls, especially high school girls who are really, really thinking about their careers and where to go to college and how to continue this practice of building as they graduate out of our program, is to have a network of women who work in industries, whether it's the trades or architecture or design or engineering, and be able to build out that network so we can connect girls on a one-to-one basis. We have a small enough community of girls that we know them so intimately, and one girl will text me and say, hey, I really want an internship in graphic design. Who do you know? And I can say these 10 women. And so we work really hard to support girls through those connections. And so for you or anyone who's listening who works in a field that would like to share their expertise, either in the specific thing that you do, or even just like, what was it like going to college to study engineering or whatever? We really want to build out that network. So if that's of interest to you, you can send us an email at info@girlsgarage.org. And we're trying to build out that network of women to connect girls to. And that could potentially, maybe post-COVID, include a gathering, a sort of, this could happen virtually too, a way to connect an entire group of women to a larger group of girls. In terms of volunteering, you know, we don't have a ton of teaching volunteering opportunities because we have a pretty steadfast cohort of instructors here, but every now and then we'll have a public facing event like a garage sale or a gala or a workshop where it's always great to have extra hands on deck. Of course, some of that is, all of that is on hold right now. But yeah, we love hearing from people. So please just send us an email and we can try to find the best way to involve you in our work.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Another question in from Amy. What was the hardest thing to make and why?
Hardest thing I wonder if that question means in the book or as a project with girls.
Not
I guess
sure.
I could.
Maybe you could answer both. I think both would be interesting in terms of the book and maybe also just with your girls.
Sure. And Amy, if you have a clarification, feel free to send that in. So with the book, this was a 3.5-year long adventure. It was extremely difficult. And I think I knew at the beginning what a behemoth this book was going to be. And I think the hardest thing, it wasn't hard, it was just an ongoing challenge, was marrying the words with the illustrations and thinking about, like, if I'm going to draw an exploded diagram of a table saw, it has to be accurate and technical, and all the parts need to be named what they're named. And it also can't feel intimidating to a 14-year-old. And so that was like a constant thing about how I had to think a lot about how to write the descriptions in a way that felt fun, but accurate and technical, and that the illustrations had to really mirror that tone. So there was also there were so many things about scale, like on a page, there's a table saw over here, and then there's like a screw over here, and we can't draw them at the same scale, but they can't be at a perfectly architectural scale. So, I mean, I have so much newfound respect for people that write textbooks for the trades. It's just, it was a lot of tiny little minutia. In the building practice of Girls Garage, I would say the hardest, it's funny, when I say hardest, I often also mean the most fun. The hardest thing that we've built recently is we have a cohort of teen girls who are all in high school. Most of them have been with us for many years. This is our advanced design build cohort. And this past summer, we built a 500 square foot chicken pavilion. We were calling it a chicken coop, but the scale of it feels like coop is not the right word. Chicken mansion, chicken campus. It's a 500 square foot coop, deck, and run. And we built this structure for an urban farm here in the Bay Area called Urban Tilth. They're based in North Richmond. And this structure was the biggest structure we've built with girls. It has a shed roof. It's a deck where we had to actually pour concrete pillars as a foundation. We built the structure, we built the run, and it was hard in all the best ways. It really required like all of the drafting, the drawing, the construction documentation, and then all of the on-site, like digging holes, pouring concrete, solving problems when our drawings weren't accurate, fixing things on the fly. We had to raise 4x8 beams 12 feet in the air. I mean, just like physically, mentally, emotionally challenging, and the best project we've ever done. It's huge, and we're so proud of it. It was also mid-COVID. It was the only project we did in person, outside on a construction site. And so over the course of the final week together, it really, it all came together in this really wonderful moment where we cut the ribbon and we stood back and said, we built that together. So I love the question about what is the hardest, because I often seek out those things. And I think like doing hard things together in this space is like really kind of the goal.
No, that's great. Thank you, Emily. Another question in from Stina. She's wondering about, so she knows that you worked about the Parklet project last year with Berkeley, and she's curious if you have any tips for how to work with or collaborate with cities on projects like this.
Did you say this is from Stina?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Stina. We know Stina. She's a friend and a supporter. Yeah, so the Parklet project that she's referring to is actually right around the corner. There's a restaurant, and like many cities, there's sort of an allocation for public parklet space where either a parking space is taken over and built out as seating, or in our case, we built a 21 foot long bench onto the sidewalk. The sidewalk is a little bit wider right in front of the building. And so within the property line, we built this very complicated, like sort of undulating 2x4 bench that goes 21 feet and then turns a corner. And the question about the city, and I say this with love, the city of Berkeley is sort of notorious for being a little bit difficult to work with in projects like this. But that said, they're also incredibly forward thinking about public space. So for our project, we actually were able to circumvent some of the normal operations of how you would build a parklet because we were within the property line. But I don't know, I'll just say this, I know I'm being recorded, but I also love finding the ways in which we can build things outside of city regulation so that we have more flexibility to do so. And I don't mean that in like a, let's just go build whatever and it might fall down kind of way. I think it's actually important for girls to understand how design and cities and building codes all interact to support the built environment. And I like to do things the way that we want to do things. I don't want to give girls extra barriers. But I do know there are a lot of cities, and Stina lives in around near Vancouver, and they're increasingly, like, Vancouver is a great city for parklets. And I know increasingly there are departments in most cities that have ordinances for parklets that are, especially now with COVID and people opening up more outdoor dining space, there seems to be a lot more like little pockets and loopholes about how you can work on public projects in like a safe way. And I always just come back to having personal relationships. There's a handful of people at the city of Berkeley who are parents of girls that come here, or who we have personal relationships with, and we can call them up and say, hey, can we do this? And they'll say, no, definitely not, or sure, in this way. So I think just having relationships with people in all stakeholder places of a project is the best way to make sure things get done well.
Thanks, Emily. So we don't have any more questions coming into the chat right now, but I know, Letha, you have some questions for Emily. Maybe I'll pass it over to you if you want to share any of your questions.
Yes, thank you, Brittany. And Emily, I wanted to go back to a project that actually is in your bio. And I found it sort of a project I was intrigued by because it seems to be one of these multi-layer projects. And at some point, you guys built a dollhouse with young girls whose mothers had been the victims of domestic violence. And I'm wondering if you could just give a little brief background on that project and its evolution, and, you know, sort of what the longer term impact of working on a project like that is.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. So this was actually 2014, I believe. So this is 6 years ago. This was a project that came out of our summer camp. And here in Berkeley, there's a wonderful organization called the Women's Daytime Drop-In Center. They serve homeless women and women who have left instances of domestic abuse. And it's a great organization. We've done many projects with them. We've built a lot of their furniture in there. They have a daytime service center, and then they also have a safe house where 6 to 8 women and children live at all times. And this came out of wanting to connect our girls to other communities of girls and women, and thinking about who else in our community is committed to the health and well-being of girls and women. And so that's how the original partnership came up. And the project itself was actually inspired by a few of the girls who were enrolled in the camp, who were children of women who were either accessing services from the Women's Daytime Drop-In Center or actually living in their safe house. And so when they joined the cohort, I saw their registration come in, and I remember meeting with one of them in particular and asking sort of very delicately, like, how do you feel working on a building project for the space in which you live? And knowing how sort of fragile and vulnerable and scary that environment was for her and for her mom. And she said, no, I'm super proud. I'm really proud to be able to contribute to the place that I'm living, and to make my life a little bit better and my mom's life a little bit better. And so originally we had thought of doing smaller furniture, like a coffee table and a sideboard. And it became clear that there were women with children who were living in the safe house, and the backyard didn't really have places for them to play. And so they would end up inside watching TV. And we wanted to make that space feel more loving and supportive for the kids. So we built a playhouse. A handful of the girls who were living there were part of the construction. And there was a basic set of plans, but there were so many opportunities for them to say, we want the window to be purple, and we want this window over here, and we want a dog door. And so it was such a great project because it really married like our own community with a larger community, and the idea that even in places where there are people that have really devastating stories and need a lot of support, that projects like this like bring a feeling of hope and also of agency, like that you can act in ways that do change your own environment. I think especially for the girls who participated, that was an important feeling for them to feel. that they could play a role in making their family's life feel a little bit better. So that's been a thing that has stuck with me. And as we work with more nonprofits and partners, that feeling has really like stayed with me. And I try to create partnerships and project opportunities where girls can feel that same kind of connection.
Awesome. That project caught my eye when I was reading your bio recently. And I think we're getting close to the end here. One really quick question. So, you know, in the middle of COVID pandemic, how do you sustain a community? Like, what's your secret recipe here?
Yeah, I ask myself that every day. I think we're all redefining what community means to us. Like for some of us, it's now just our pod. For some of us, the community is even bigger. Like we're going to protests. And I think the first question is always like, who is your community? For me, it will always be our girls and the women who work here and teach here and support this organization. I recently recorded a video with and for you about this very topic, like what it means to be a leader in 2020 and just how different it is to be faced with all these challenges and what that does to your thinking about your role in change. And I guess what I would say is everything feels so monumentally hard right now. And for me, the best way to feel like I'm keeping our community alive and focused on joy is just to connect with people on an individual level. I mean, there are so many girls who will text me, or there's one girl who just graduated from high school and is now at art school in New York. And she was texting me the other night because there was a bolt on her bunk bed and she didn't know how to get it undone. She wanted to change her bunk bed. So she's like texting me about her bolt on her bunk bed, and things like that matter. Or there's a girl, you know, who was in our summer program and didn't have the right materials to participate in this class. And we did this activity where she needed a single egg and her parents couldn't get to the store. So I drove an egg to her house. I mean, these things feel like so silly. And yet I just feel like the more we can stay like intimately connected to each other, to be asking each other, like, what is the thing you need today? I need an egg. I need you to tell me how to get this bolt undone. Maybe those aren't the things that like an executive director should be doing. Perhaps I should be like reviewing reports or on virtual conferences, but I'm not. I'm shopping for screws and teaching girls how to do things on Zoom and then teaching things here. And it's those like minute, tiny little moments that have really kept me going. And I think they mean a lot to our girls to know that when everything feels really hard, there's a person and a space that isn't going anywhere, that will be here if you need supplies, if you need to borrow a drill. I want this space and community to feel like something that's consistent in the lives of our girls.
Amazing. Well, we're just about out of time. And Emily, I would really love to thank you for joining us today. It's just been an amazing experience, as always, to spend some time with you, even if you're in California and I'm in Washington, but at least we can see each other, and that's amazing. I'd like to thank Brittany for helping us. And, you know, just a few closing words, Emily, to you. I just really, on behalf of PopTech and all of the communities we share through a bunch of different organizations, I would really love to thank you for being a generous, brave, and nurturing leader to the communities you serve. It's just wonderful to spend time with you and to hear your work. And we're going to be here to keep letting people know what you're up to. So thank you again. And many thanks to all of our viewers who joined us today from probably all over the country. We're delighted to have you with us, and we wish you all a wonderful rest of the day and week. And we'll see you soon at another event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was so fun.